Tonight we could see Chris Jericho's final All Elite Wrestling in-ring match. That is, of course, if he loses against MJF, because tonight's AEW is presenting All Out from Chicago, Illinois, from the Now Arena. It's called now, rather than the Sears Center. It's what is a bit of a homecoming, I suppose, for AEW, right? You had the first ever All Out was at the Now Arena. In fact, All In was at the Sears Center, as it was then in 2018. Then you had All Out in 2019. Of course, last year it was in Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida, because of obviously other issues around the globe. But now they're back. They're back at the Now Arena in Chicago, and Chris Jericho is facing MJF in what they're calling the Final Fight. I think that's what it's being named as. The Final Fight, I think, is what they're referring to it as. I don't know, but the stipulation they've gone with on this one, of course, is that if Chris Jericho loses, this is going to be his final match inside of an All Elite Wrestling ring, because this thing has been going, since November last year. I mean, this storyline at this point has been nearly going for a full calendar year, which I guess you have to credit AEW and Chris Jericho and MJF for, because they've managed to find a way of stretching it out and kind of getting to a point where, I guess there is still a little bit, there still was a little bit of interest in it. I don't know about you, and I don't want to be negative. I really don't want to be negative, but I do kind of have a feeling at this point when it comes to Jericho and MJF where I'm kind of done. I'm kind of done with this feud. Not in the sense that it's been bad. It's just because if it's been going on for quite a while and everything has a shelf life. That's just it. I mean, again, it started off in November last year. Maybe even earlier than that. When was the whole Le Dinner Debonair speech? That might have been October. That might have been like October time. Again, legitimately, this has been going on for near 12 months. And that whole Le Dinner Debonair thing, you remember the uproar that had at the time? I wasn't massively this biggest fan of it, I must say, but it just feels a million years ago, and they're still feuding at this point. So, again, you have to give them credit for being able to stretch this out for how long it's been going on for. I suppose that's totally true, but it's just a case of I'm kind of done with it. So if you try and track this feud as to how it sort of got to where it was, Jericho and MJF were sort of feuding initially, and it was a case of if MJF could beat Chris Jericho, he would join the Inner Circle. He did beat Chris Jericho, so he joined the Inner Circle, and then he kind of tried to break up the Inner Circle from within, because earlier this year, right, at Revolution, they were challenging for the Tag Team Championships, which they lost, and then MJF kind of infiltrated the Inner Circle, tried to sow seeds of dissension, tried to break it up, and Sammy Guevara left for a little bit, and then he came back, and then they found out that MJF was trying to break it up the whole time from within, and that's how you get the Pinnacle forming, and that's how you lead to Blood and Guts with MJF throwing Chris Jericho off the top of the cage, and that's how you lead to Stadium Stampede, and then that's how you lead to the 5 Labors of Jericho, which I did enjoy. I did enjoy the 5 Labors of Jericho, even though, again, which is kind of been the point of almost this feud, is that it's some points it felt quite backwards in how it was set up, because you started off going up against Shawn Spears, and he could use a chair, and you go, okay, that's a good starting off point. And then after that, you have, what was it? Then you had the Nick Gage one. And with the Nick Gage one, that kind of felt like the peak, because then you have Wardlow, then you have, who did you have? Then you had Juventud Guerrera, then you have Wardlow. I mean, I might be getting that order wrong, that must be said. But anyway, MJF beats Jericho, manages to tap him out in the 5th labor of Jericho, and Jericho, to get that final match against MJF, says, you know what, I need to beat him. I need to prove to myself that I can beat MJF. I need to prove to myself that it can be done, so I'm going to face you one more time. I'm going to challenge you one more time, except this time, because I know you've got no reason to accept this time, I'm willing to put my career on the line. And that's what he said. He said, if I can't beat MJF at All Out, if I lose the match, then I'm going to retire from in-ring competition. Now, most of the time, whenever they do this stipulation, when I say they, I mean pro wrestling, whenever this sort of stipulation is done in pro wrestling, you lean onto the side of he's not going to retire. I mean, they did it for Roman Reigns, right? SummerSlam wasn't exactly the same, but it was kind of the same of, if I don't beat John Cena for the Universal Championship at SummerSlam, I'm going to leave the WWE. And you go, well, great, because you know the outcome. You know the situation is Roman Reigns definitely isn't going to leave WWE, so he's going to win. And with Jericho, that would probably be the case here, considering that he is tied into a contract until 2022. But there's just this little thing, isn't there? There's a little thing in your mind that goes, well, maybe I guess I could kind of see that maybe happening, I suppose, because obviously Chris Jericho's age. He's in his 50s now, I think, right? He was 49 when he signed his contract, so I think he's 50, 51 at this point. He had the whole 30 years or Jericho, 30 years of Jericho kind of thing, and they had that last year in October, and he's got the book out at the moment, which is about the 30 years of Jericho and all of the matches that he's had during his 30 years and all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing. They're doing a bit of a retrospective, I guess, on his career. But furthermore, I think the real thing that makes me think, well, maybe, just maybe he could retire, is that the 5 Labors of Jericho did kind of feel like, I don't know, it did kind of feel like a retirement tour. You know, like pro wrestlers, you don't really see it in WWE. You kind of do, or maybe Kurt Angle did it when he retired in 2019, where they essentially do a farewell tour, and they have these matches against these different people they want to either put over, or they want to have matches they've never had before, tick things off the proverbial bucket list, or face people that they haven't faced in a long time. And that's kind of what Jericho did, right? He faced Juventud Guerrero, which was a throwback to his WCW days. He had this gritty, ultra-violent death match, which you never thought you'd have Chris Jericho facing off against. He went up against a Wardlow, and he faced off against Shawn Spears, and eventually he put over the young guy in MJF. And it kind of did feel like some people were saying on social media and that kind of stuff, you know what, it does kind of feel like maybe, just maybe, this could be actually a retirement tour by Jericho. We know he's transitioning into other things. He's done commentary on Dynamite, but now he's a full-time commentator on Rampage. Whether or not you agree that he's any good as a commentator on Rampage, I think leaves a lot to be left desired, to be honest with you, because yes, he does scream, and yes, he's over the top, and yes, he does this a lot. He does that a lot, and that's very frustrating. I think Jericho, personally, his best commentary was on those shows in Atlanta at the Nightmare Factory, and those early Dynamites in the beginning of the pandemic, when they were forced to tape like 6 weeks worth of television in like 12 hours or 18 hours, whatever it was, and they taped all of those Dynamite shows, and Jericho was on commentary with Tony Schiavone. If anything, he was very good there because he was a bit more reserved. Yes, he got over the top in certain situations because he's Chris Jericho. He's still Le Champion. That's what he does. That's the character. But he was fine in that role because he still tried to call the action and put people over. As time has gone on, and he's done the guest commentary spots on Dynamite, and when he's done commentary on Rampage as well, he's there just shrieking into the microphone, and it's already a difficult situation with the commentary because the broadcast booth, in my opinion, for Rampage is far, far, far too big and far too packed. You've got 4 people in there. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it should be, in my opinion, I think Mark Henry should just move into just being the interviewer. He can be the Tony Schiavone role of interviewing people either backstage or in the ring. That can be Mark Henry's role, doing sit-down interviews. Then you have a 3-person booth of Excalibur, Taz, and Jericho. To be honest with you, I wouldn't mind if it was just Excalibur and Taz anyway. I think they do a great job on Dark, and that should be on cable television. But I guess they want to have that recognizable name in the commentary booth, and they're already planning, one could argue, for what Jericho will be doing once his in-ring days are over. So there is a little bit in one's mind that does kind of think, well, maybe, right? He's already doing commentary for Rampage. Maybe he does start to do stuff for Dynamite too. There have been those rumors, haven't there, about JR transitioning out of doing commentary full-time on Dynamite, doing more backstage interviews, doing more just pay-per-view events or big matches. Who would take Jim Ross's spot? Jim Ross isn't doing lead play-by-play on Dynamite. That's Excalibur mostly. Jim Ross is doing color commentary. So maybe there could be a situation where Jim Ross transitions out and Jericho transitions into Jim Ross's spot. That's a possibility there as well. So all of those things, you know, I'm doing a Chris Jericho, the 5 Labors of Jericho, him doing the commentary on Rampage, and maybe transitioning into doing commentary on Dynamite, maybe that does lead into going, you know what, maybe this is going to be it. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that Jericho would do something like this. Jericho's a different guy. He does do stuff that's different. And he said before, and this was back when he was just doing, I think there was a period of time with WWE in like 2015, 2014. He just did live events for like 6 months. He just did live events. He didn't do TVs. He just came back and did live events. And they said, why? Because I like live events and that's what I want to do. And he was doing that, and they asked him about retiring, and I think this was when it was like 25 years. So this might have been like 2015 or something like that. It was like 25 years of Chris Jericho. And they asked him about it. They said, you know, when are you going to retire? What's your feelings about retirement? And he said, you know what? I don't want a big fanfare. I don't want a big farewell. the day that I'm done and the day that I don't want to do it anymore, I'll just leave. I'll just stop doing it. And people will go, are you done? And he'll just go, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. And that would be very Chris Jericho to do. It would be very Chris Jericho to do. Now, personally, when it comes to tonight's match, if I'm going to be honest with you, if you ask me to make a prediction here, I think that, of course, Chris Jericho wins. I don't see Chris Jericho retiring from in-ring competition tonight. I do see Chris Jericho winning, considering when you look at it, MJF has kind of won every big match, especially in the singles form of things. Again, if you track it back all the way to Full Gear last year, MJF won that match. They won the match, of course, recently on Dynamite. He won the match for the Pinnacle at Blood and Guts, the Blood and Guts match. Yes, they won the Stadium Stampede, the Inner Circle, but that was Sammy Guevara, and that was against Shawn Spears inside the arena. So really, Jericho doesn't have any victories over MJF. So because of that, you could argue that the feud technically should end with Jericho getting the victory, and I think it will. I think that's the way the story goes here, and I don't think that hurts MJF at all, actually. I think MJF, you have to look at it, is one of the most protected guys. I mean, which singles guys has MJF lost to? I think it's Moxley, and is that about it? It might be about it. It might just be Moxley in terms of singles matches that MJF has lost, and that was a year ago, right? That was a year ago at All Out. So I think we could see a second consecutive All Out defeat for MJF coming at the hands of Chris Jericho, because I just don't see him retiring. I think there's more for him to do, more that he wants to do, and you can just tell that, again, I mentioned it, Jericho's a different guy, he does different stuff, and even doing the deathmatch stuff, you get the impression he wanted to do that because he'd never done that before. And Chris Jericho likes to shock people and likes to be like, yeah, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something that people don't expect me to do, and I'm going to do matches, and I've still got things I want to do. You can't tell me that with the names that are coming in to AEW right now, whether they're CM Punk, Bryan Danielson is rumored to be making his debut tonight as well at All Out 2. You can't tell me that with those names coming in, Chris Jericho doesn't look at those and go, yeah, I want to wrestle them again. Now, whether someone like myself actually does want to see, Bryan Danielson versus Jericho or CM Punk versus Chris Jericho, I don't know, to be honest with you. I really don't know if I care to see that. I would prefer to see Bryan Danielson maybe versus a CM Punk again, because I think that match does have legs. But, your Bryan Danielsons versus your Kenny Omegas versus Hangman Pages, those kind of matches that really interest me. Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, those names I think are far more interesting than seeing Bryan Danielson versus Chris Jericho. But look, they're different characters, they're different people at this point. It's not Daniel Bryan versus Chris Jericho from WWE circa 2012. It's Bryan Danielson versus Chris Jericho in AEW in 2021. There are different landscapes, and I think Jericho will probably look at that and go, yeah, I want to wrestle Punk again. Yeah, I want to wrestle Bryan Danielson. Maybe Bray Wyatt when he comes in. I think there's a story still to tell with Chris Jericho against Sammy Guevara, someone like that. I think that if Jericho's going to retire, and have his final match, and that's going to be in AEW, I think he would probably want it to be against Sammy Guevara or put over a Sammy Guevara in the middle of the ring, because that's kind of going to be his legacy in AEW anyway. So to be honest with you, I struggle to see Jericho retiring tonight. I wouldn't put it past him. This is the only thing I will say, is I wouldn't put it past him having the match tonight whereby it's a case of Jericho does lose and retire for, say, like 6 months, and he does just do commentary on Rampage, or does just do commentary on Dynamite, or just manages the Inner Circle or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised in that, and then somehow they do a thing where he comes out of retirement. I don't know whether or not AEW would want to do that, it must be said. The reason why I say I'm not sure if AEW would want to do that, because I feel like AEW are very strong in their sort of morals in terms of stipulations, and they like to try to stick to them. It's the same with like the Cody Rhodes thing in the AEW World Championship. Cody Rhodes, when he lost that match against Chris Jericho, said, right, if I lose, I can never challenge for the World Championship again. And he hasn't. They've stuck to that. I still think at some point they'll probably go around it, to be honest with you, especially if Cody turns heel, which I think he should. But AEW does tend to stick to their stipulations and try and reinforce them. So I would assume if Jericho did retire, then that would mean he's done, and they're not going to find another way around it. Of course, it's pro wrestling at the end of the day, and anything's possible, and anything can and will happen. But if you pushed me and said, Owen, you need to make a prediction on this one, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to say I think Jericho wins the match. I think Jericho doesn't retire. I think Jericho eventually does get his victory over MJF, but it should be a great match on, look, what is going to be already an absolutely fantastic card. It's arguably the best card that AEW has ever put together. It's is their biggest event ever, and it's certainly their biggest card of the year. I'm just fascinated because I think they're going to do bigger cards. I think Full Gear, arguably, is going to be a bigger card. I think the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite in New York at Arthur Ashe Stadium is arguably going to be a bigger edition or bigger card that they've ever done. So this is kind of the beginning of what's going to be a real big couple of shows for AEW, and they've already done some massive shows already this year, and Jericho MJF is just going to be one of them. So I'm going to go with Chris Jericho to win, but look, anything can happen. It's pro wrestling at the end of the day. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your predictions for MJF versus Chris Jericho tonight? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Get the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.